the end of the day, people don't work at the co-op to get rich. They work at the co-op to serve because they have a love of their community.
Welcome to another episode of the Community Broadband Bits podcast. I'm Christopher Mitchell at the Institute for Local Self-Reliance in St. Paul, Minnesota. And today I'm speaking with a repeat guest again. We've got Alyssa Clemson Roberts, who is the CEO of the New Hampshire Electric Cooperative. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Christopher. I appreciate being here again.
I'm excited to talk to you. We've talked before at some of your previous stops, and feel like you've worked for most of the electric cooperatives in the nation now.
No, just a couple.
So with a name like NHEC, can we assume that there's one electric cooperative in New Hampshire and you're the one?
Yes, we are the only electric cooperative in the state of New Hampshire.
But you have a pretty good footprint. You guys are a pretty good size.
Yes, we are the second largest electric utility in the state. We serve about 6,000 miles of line, 86,000 meters, and we are the largest electric cooperative in New England.
And just for your background, for people who, for whom you might be a new name, I feel like you started off kind of doing policy and think work out with the trade group. Was it UTC originally?
Yes, so that's actually my first job in this space was at Rural Utility Service as a loan specialist in their broadband program. And then I worked for a broadband over power line provider. And then I went to work for UTC and about 26 co-ops across the country. And we grew that group to over 200, trying to spread the word that electric cooperatives were such a natural fit to provide rural broadband service for decades, that had been really ignored areas.
And then you went to Pedernales, which I think was not going to get into the broadband business.
But I went to Ozarks in Arkansas,
right?
And they did. And then I went to Pedernales, and they did not. They took a brief look at it while I was there, but decided not to.
But then you went to one of my favorite stories. Actually, it's kind of funny because Delta Electric in Delta Montrose Electric Authority Association, DMEA, Delta Montrose Electric Association in the Western Slope was one of the other co-ops I'm familiar with, where the original management and leadership, the board, said no, we don't want to touch this broadband thing, and then a coordinated campaign of people that were living there said, yes, this is really important, we need you on board, and they changed their mind, and that's exactly what happened in New Hampshire too. So I feel like, if nothing else, you've been involved with cooperatives that are truly living up to that democratic ideal.
Yeah, no, and I think it's really important that your members are on board with this. Your members own you as an electric utility, and there are elements of risk that come with entering into a broadband business, right? There's so much reward there, but when your members, that this is what they want, that we're here to fill a need. So I think to me, it's such a natural fit. We know the space, we know the area, we know how to meet rural needs, we know how to build in rural areas, we know how to maintain, we already own, the poles and the wires and the whole bit. So it is such a natural fit. On top of that, I think where our electric utilities are going for the future, that fiber network is going to help get us where we need to be a utility of the future. So again, strengthens the electric grid, provides benefits to our members. What more could you ask for?
Well, before we talk more about what New Hampshire is doing, I do want to ask you, when you were at Pedernales, I feel like, if I'm remembering correctly, we talked about how one of the barriers that the electric cooperatives faced in getting into this space is that in many cases, management is nearing retirement age, and it's not only difficult to begin a big project that you're not going to see through, it may not be a very wise decision. And so I'm curious, has that changed over the years? Do you see a different barrier right now, or are there any major barriers to electric cooperatives getting into this space right now?
I think you're still seeing that there are a fair amount of electric cooperative CEOs that are set to turn over in this space. I think too, there's this propaganda that broadband is too hard or that electric cooperative employees aren't skilled, and they are skilled. It's honing those skills, it's changing those skills, it's expanding those skills. But I think just some of the fear of the unknown, and I think there's a lot of fear mongering, if I'm honest with you, from our friendly cable and telco friends who, quite frankly, they don't want us in the business because we're challenging what has been considered status quo for a long time. And that's, promise you something in our advertisement and deliver far less at your door. Whereas we're saying, this is what it's going to cost. This is what we're going to deliver. And then we actually, go do that.
Well, and it's remarkable. In some ways, it's magical. I feel like when I look at what electric cooperatives are doing in terms of delivering hundreds of megabits per second at a base tier, often in the $60 or $70 range, and sometimes even below that. That is truly remarkable when I feel like other operators just can't even get to that. And I have to assume that that's a combination of having access to the polls, having crews that are already well trained, and not having to do a lot of marketing because you've built that trust for decades. Are there other factors? Like how do so many co-ops offer such a reasonable price in such challenging circumstances?
Well, I would just say I think that the wires and poles sort of help. I mean, we know our territory, right? But at the end of the day, we still have to market because we have areas of competition. You still have to provide the service and deliver the goods. At the end of the day, what the difference is we're not propping up legacy systems, right? That we have over and over invested in and strung along for years and years and years. We're starting from scratch. And the second driver in my mind is this: my motive for delivering broadband isn't profit. I'm not saying that our business, we don't want it to be profitable. We do.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not my motive. My motive is not generating profits. My motive is providing service. So not having a legacy system to prop up and having your motive be service changes the ballgame. We're actually offering our first level of service is called basic. It's at 100 megabit symmetrical service, fiber to the home, and it's $49.95 a month, which is pretty amazing. Our next level is the gigabit symmetrical, again, $79.95 a month. And then we're offering a 2 gig, which I can't wait till that rolls into my house. I'm still waiting for the area of where I live to be built out, but that's $99 a month for 2 gig.
Oh, still paying
Isn't
less
that
than I am.
incredible? I'm just showing off now, aren't I?
Yeah. I mean, I live in St. Paul, Minnesota, part of a metro area with about 3 million people. We got Comcast cable, and I'm paying more than $100 a month for gigabit down and 40 gigabit up, and got a big old bandwidth cap on that too, that I'm sitting here 4 days before the end of the month, and I'm wondering if I'm going to exceed it or not. I'm kind of dialing back a little bit right now.
Yep. No, we have that. We have that happen too. We get the notices, and then I start getting billed extra above and beyond, which is always my favorite thing to happen. But our lives are driven by data.
What are you seeing in terms of take up then? Are you getting a lot of people taking that gigabit option, the middle tier?
We're seeing a lot more people take the gigabit than we thought. And I'll be honest, we've seen a little more interest in the 2 gig even too. And I think some of that's, bragging rights, or maybe they have multiple teenagers in their house, because God knows, they're going to steal up that bandwidth as fast as you can churn it out. But we're seeing a fair amount in that gigabit range, which I think is spectacular. I think people are seeing today too, the need for symmetrical service, right? It used to be all about the download, but as you and I are sitting here, we're on a video call too, right? So, having that symmetrical service is part of the need for today's, modern workforce, modern education, modern anything.
Yes, I'm frequently sharing large files with other people now that I'm working from home, much more than I used to. And there's actually times where I have to go into our symmetrical gigabit connection in the office just to be able to transfer like multi-hundred gigabit files, video files, generally with a contractor or something like that. And first of all, it'd take too long and it would eat into my cap here from Comcast. So I feel like I'm usually about 2 years ahead of where the public is going. So I expect we'll see that happening more to more people. But let's jump into New Hampshire. So your service territory is kind of a weirdly shaped one, if I remember correctly.
It is weirdly shaped. We've kind of got a big pod in the middle, and then a little pod on the top, and a little pod in the south. It's a different territory. I always laugh because we probably have crazier maps than political maps look. So, it's just how electric, divisions and barriers and lines of demarcation go.
So let's go back before you were the before you were the CEO, and there was an effort to encourage the electric cooperative to go into broadband. I think they needed a 65% vote, and they got 63% or something like that. But the leadership saw the writing on the wall and said, "All right, let's figure this out." And then if we fast forward, I think you've had some support from the state. So tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are right now.
In 2019, our members started asking about broadband and for broadband. This is pre-COVID. They started asking for broadband. And then in June, they attempted to change the Articles of Incorporation. And like you said, it was a majority voted to change them, but not the super majority as required. And then in October of 2020, the members did meet the minimum threshold for the vote, and they voted to change the bylaws. And then shortly after that, the co-op began offering some limited service through some CARES funding, to a few communities throughout our territory. And then, in January, they formed the NH Broadband, which is our wholly owned subsidiary that's delivering the broadband service. So that would have been January 2021. And then December of 2021, signed a contract with Connexon to do the build with them. And then in the last year, we started offering service in Ackworth and Sandwich. And Sandwich was our first build with Connexon in September. And I think it was late October, early November, the state awarded us a $50 million grant to build most of Grafton County and then some small slivers of the counties around that, which it'll end up being built to, I think, about 30% of our members. So finish that build, we'll start building to the rest. I know that, we're committed to doing this and doing this right. And we know that our members need and want service. So we're moving as fast as we can right now, as fast as snow and now the mud will allow us to move.
Yeah, nothing like having a particularly severe winter, right? When you're trying to get all these time schedules get all organized. I just come back to the just the jealousy that we have for people in the South. Not only do they have 12 months that's easier to do the micro trenching and other kind of techniques that are really impractical in my experience in most of our northern climates.
No, it's true. I just watched a video of someone brushing off their car. It was like a meme. And she kept saying, no alligators, no hurricanes, no earthquakes, and I thought, well, that's true, as I'm brushing snow off my car in late March and it's, 30 degrees and raining ice, no alligators, no hurricanes, and no earthquakes. So
yeah, I don't know how your roads are, though. This has been a brutal year for us, and we're simulating the surface of the moon right now. So it's pretty rough.
Yeah, I would say that is one of the first things my family noticed when we moved to New Hampshire. As you know, I'm from the Midwest. In fact, grew up in Iowa and Minnesota. It's one thing I haven't really lived around for a long time is like roads that are impacted by this harsh of weather. And so it's been eye-opening for us as well.
So I'm curious if there's something that keeps you up right now around the broadband work. Is there a common thing that's popping up?
I think one of the things that I worry about right now is supply chain, like everyone, right? And it's more on the meat and potatoes side of it. I know that we have pole replacements to make. Trying to get poles right now, the size poles and the quality of poles that, we like to build with has become a huge issue. Getting talent to be able to do this type of work, because there are so many people that are building fiber to the home networks right now, attracting the talent, convincing them that they want to live in New Hampshire with our 8 months of winter and prelude to winter can be challenging. But I did just convince a former DMEA staffer to come join me out here. He's built thousands of miles of fiber, and I'm really excited to have him come out here and help us with our project and get that underway. And I will say, above and beyond all of that is, can we build it fast enough? How fast can I get to my members? Because number one, I know they want it. Number two, I know they need it. And number three, they deserve it. So how do I get it there as fast as I can, but safely and with a good plan, right? Those are the big challenges.
Well, so for with a $50 million grant, or the $50 million that the state is giving you one way or another, how long will it take you to deploy all of that?
We think about 3 years. We're moving pretty fast. We want to get up to a point where we're building about 20 to 25 miles of fiber a week. Connexon likes to build 20 miles a week. We're going to have to build a little faster than that, just because there are going to be times where we can't build, i.e. mud, i.e. snow. So we're going to get to a point where we're moving a little bit faster even than we are right now, which will be great. But, you just can't go fast enough. I had a woman tell me the other day, she said, Alyssa, I want you to know this. You either have fiber or you don't. Your promises mean nothing to me. and while I was like, oh, I totally get it. She stabbed me in the heart. I wanted to lay down and beg her forgiveness and bring her the fiber myself. It's true. If you don't have it, you don't have it. And so I would say we are especially cognizant and sensitive to that. And so we're trying to get moving as quickly as we can in a way that makes sense too, right? Because you've got to manage a good build.
Well, are you seeing actual shortages that are slowing down your build? Because that's a question I have for everyone. Everyone's worried about the supply chain shortage, but when I ask about reality versus the fears, there's a concern that it will take you 60 weeks to get a truck or something like that. But then it seems like a lot of material is coming earlier. Now, you probably have plenty of places to store things. Are you getting early shipments now as some of the other providers are backing off?
We're doing early shipments on almost everything. Again, the only thing I would say right now I'm really short on is poles.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that is we had a really brutal winter and we had one storm that had over 120 broken poles in a single storm, which is astronomical amount. So for us, there's ways to do some temporary attachments and come back and do some replacement, but that just adds complexity and time and everything else. So right now it's poles. And I know we've had some issues before with other items. I think there were some fiber delays, but right now we've got a pretty good stockpile and we know at the speed we're moving. So we've been able to buy out ahead. And then I know we were waiting on a couple servers as well, but they've come in and they've been, upgraded and replaced. And again, like everyone, you're having employee shortages and everything else. So when we need work from contractors, sometimes there's delays in getting actual, crews in place to get moving or installations done or upgrades that you want to your backhaul. So it's just little delays, nothing massive, but it all adds up. And then, weather's put us back about probably 6 weeks from where we'd like to be. So when the mud starts to clear out, we'll really start to hopefully gain some ground and get ahead is where I would like to enter next winter a little bit ahead of where we're supposed to be.
Yes.
And let's knock on wood, maybe it will be not quite as brutal of a winter.
Right. I do think we have, first of all, as someone who does sports photography, I'm always looking for that early spring. And every year I feel like we're due, and some years we get it, but most of the time I feel like we don't. So
yeah, I think spring here, and I just might be guessing, is just an extension of winter.
Yeah. Well,
somebody asked me, are you ever going to not wear winter clothes? I was like, I don't know. I haven't had a chance to not wear winter clothes yet.
Well, we were up to 35 the other day and I was going out. I just went to the store in my t-shirt. So
I'm
nice.
not that brave. If it's 35, I'm the one going, you need a coat. Put your coat on.
I know very little about poles. What I do know, they were talking about most of the poles come out of Brazil. Is that where, I mean, do you have like a different supplier, or is there like kind of a big supply chain issue with them all being sourced from a similar place, or is there some variety?
I think it just depends what kind of a pole you use. It depends on the class of pole you use, the height of pole you use. Everyone likes the pole that we like to use. We like a 45-foot pole, and it's been hard to find. And as we're calling around, everyone's always like, well, how about you take this instead, right? And I think, again, I don't know if it's tree growth or what it is, or if it's just moving items around, or again, if other places are facing, shortages. But I know that our typical suppliers, it's delayed. Not as much as some of our electric infrastructure has been delayed. Like, don't even get me started on how long it takes to get a transformer. It's 52 weeks and counting right now.
I was gonna say, because those take like a year to manufacture, don't they?
They should not take a year to manufacture. Okay. It's just nobody has them right now. It's insane. And the price has gone up over 100%. So it's crazy.
Because that's the nightmare that I feel like a lot of us worry about regarding hackers in the grid, is the potential for them to damage a bunch of transformers and then not even be able to bring power back online for substantial parts of the grid.
Well, I worry more at this point almost from the physical security aspect of it too, as you're watching people, take shots at transformers, substations.
Right.
We all have security measures in place, but there are not enough security measures to prevent every aspect of attack, right?
You can't just push the fences back in every case and create a much larger
build them
perimeter.
Higher and make them concrete. You hit a point where it's like, okay, you've got to start balancing security with expenditure and a hardening of your grid. And I will say, I know we all do the best we can, but it's not a perfect world any of us live in, that's for sure.
So what are you seeing in terms of the places that you've already built out? Are you seeing interesting differences in Sandwich as compared to other towns that are still waiting in terms of like population shift or jobs moving or anything like that?
No, I don't know that we have enough data to share that yet, because the build in Sandwich just got completed. But I will tell you what we have seen since COVID is that our area was, about 40% seasonal. And we're getting ready to do a survey and ask some questions, but we think people have come to New Hampshire and not gone home.
Mm-hmm.
And that they've stayed here in their second home because they like the state of New Hampshire. And they like the hiking and the outdoors and the, boating and the snowshoeing and the skiing and all of the great things that you can find here. So we think people have stayed remote more than they would have before. And I think as we continue to build out, you're going to continue to see that trend grow because of the access you have.
I heard an interview with Governor Sununu in which she basically made the case that New Hampshire is the best place to be, and it's surrounded by a bunch of miserable places to live. So he was, he may have been working the room a little bit in that case. But I'm curious, since you've been to so many different areas and you've had this this chance to watch the industry grow up. What are some things that you've seen that are common across electric cooperatives getting into this? And then what are some things that have been quite different from co-op to co-op?
I think one thing that's common is what you talk about changes. When you work at an electric cooperative, usually the first thing you hear from is when you run into people and they know you're a co-op employee, they want to ask you about outages or they want to ask you about, upgrades. Now, the only thing anybody wants to talk to you about is when you're bringing them broadband. And so I think that has been very common across all of the cooperatives I've been.
Wait, can we pause there for a second?
Yeah.
Is that true for both people that have nothing at their home as well as people that might have a cable service in their home, just so people have a sense?
I have cable service in my home, I will admit. And my neighbor actually stopped me the other day and said, "Hey, Alyssa, I saw the NH broadband truck not too far from our house. When are we getting broadband?" And he's like, "Do we get it a little sooner? Because I live next to you." And I said, "Well, no, we'll probably be the last ones to get it on this build. So I'm sorry you have the misfortune of living next to me." But he was very excited and also has service and wanted to know like what I was recommending. And it was very funny. And then another neighbor walked up to ask a question about it. So I everywhere I go, that's like the number one question we get. It doesn't matter. I think the other thing that I have found in common is when you're starting the process, employees are very uneasy, right? Because that's a lot of change and transformation for an organization to go through.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever there's unknown and change, you have this kind of, it's almost like an angsty, pre-teen growing phase. And then you can watch people really change, because at the end of the day, people don't work at the co-op to get rich. They work at the co-op to serve because they have a love of their community and they know why they're here. And so as the members are starting to get excited and get service and they can see this, you have this, kind of change with how employees feel about it. It's no longer just more work, and it is more work, but they see the value in what is happening. And I think that has been pretty consistent to everywhere I've been that has gone through this. You see a rub between what's more important, electric or broadband. And I would say electric, but broadband's a close second. So we just bring it along with us, right?
Yes. And I think for people who aren't very familiar with co-ops, they should know that employees who have been there for a while may not have been there during the discussions about whether or not to take a share of a nuclear power plant or to get involved with propane or to get involved with satellite technologies. But co-ops have had to make hard decisions in the past, and some of those have had very challenging financial repercussions that leave a mark, frankly.
And that is absolutely true. And I think that's, true here. And I think it's been true other places as well. The only real difference that I have seen is, just the pace of build. Again, the weather plays a huge role in that. I think now, too, as you're going into the business, there are so many footsteps to follow, right? You're not inventing the wheel as you go. So you have a sense of comfort that I think the first builders of fiber just didn't really have, right? I mean, Bob Hance at Midwest Energy and Communications was blazing a trail. Mike Kaiser at Bark Electric, blazing a trail. Mitchell Johnson at Ozarks Electric in Arkansas, blazing that trail. Randy Clint at Como, before he was Connexon, blazing that trail. Jonathan Chapers at the FCC going, wow, I see it now. I see this cooperative difference. There are some key players in this. Dave Sabala in Douglas Electric in Oregon. I mean, him and Vidadapur, Sheila Allgood. I mean, these people were blazing a trail and they had no idea what the next step looked like. They just knew they had to take it. Now, as we're building, we all have this luxury of picking up the phone. It's one of the first things I do when we're at a crossroads. I shoot a note out to a couple co-ops that we're working with, or I go, hey, Bob, can I put my CFO on the phone with your CFO? What do these reports look like? Or, hey, Mitchell, would you guys mind sharing with us how you built your fiber lease? Or, hey, Bob, what are you doing with this? I have all this great network of people and experience that we can call on, where those first, I mean, they were just stepping off a cliff every single day as they built their networks, and they've been wildly successful. And I mean, they've changed people's lives for sure. They've changed the shape of their communities and their counties and their states. It's remarkable.
It is. I mean, especially recognizing that I think Arkansas and Mississippi will be states that make major gains from historically having really some of the worst internet access to having some of the best internet access in rural areas.
It's incredible. Arkansas was 47th out of 50 in the country for broadband. And when those co-ops are done, I mean, they've got to be in the top 10.
I would think so.
You talk about leadership and putting your money where your mouth is. It's pretty incredible.
So last question is relating to BEAD. I'm curious, since you were talking about being in this network, when I look at all of the rules and the concerns that people have, there's a part of me that just sits back and says, as long as the co-ops can find a way to get a big chunk of this money, it'll be okay. So I'm curious how you're looking at BEAD and how you hear other people looking at, and knowing that each state will have a slightly different take on it. But generally, are you looking at this as an opportunity? Are you nervous about some aspects of it? How do you think about it?
I think anytime that there's money that's put out, you get nervous because it's money and it's going to be competitive. But I also think, we're looking at it here. We're just waiting for the state to come out with the rules. And we think the BEA's done a pretty good job thus far of administering programs. And, going to have to trust the process, that they know what they're doing. And then we're going to take a look at what makes sense for our area that's left and what makes sense from NHEC's perspective. And then how do we go be competitive for those funds? And how do we bring in as much funding as we can to help serve what we think are the most underserved parts of the state. So I'm not too concerned yet. I'm just kind of sitting back and watching. And as I tell my board, they're always watching. And I would say I've got some very engaged board members, especially on the broadband side. They're very passionate about this, and their passion really helped bring this to fruition up here. I'm really concerned right now getting the $50 million built and spent and done. And, we'll grab what we can along the way. But right now, we're just moving forward. You just keep moving forward. And I think most cooperatives are in the same boat that I'm in, right? They're building, they're going, and we're going to grab what we can. But our heads are down and we're busy and we're just going to keep.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, my gosh. Thanks so much for having me. It's always a privilege and an honor.
We have transcripts for this and other podcasts available at muninetworks.org/broadbandbits. Email us at podcast@muninetworks.org with your ideas for the show. Follow Chris on Twitter. His handle is @CommunityNets. Follow muninetworks.org stories on Twitter. The handle's @muninetworks. Subscribe to this and other podcasts from ILSR, including Building Local Power, Local Energy Rules, and the Composting for Community podcast. You can access them anywhere you get your podcasts. You can catch the latest important research from all of our initiatives if you subscribe to our monthly newsletter at ilsr.org. While you're there, please take a moment to donate. Your support in any amount keeps us going. Thank you to Arnie Hughesby for the song Warm Duck Shuffle, licensed through Creative Commons. This was the Community Broadband Bits podcast. Thanks for listening.